This is Get Inspired with Dr. Barb show. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Get Inspired with Dr. Barb show. Today we have a fabulous guest, Ariel Farkash. She's an amazing special education teacher. I am so grateful that I found Ariel on social media, and we can learn a little bit more today about some strategies and also about the work of special education teachers. Welcome to the show, Ariel.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful to be here today.
You're welcome. First, I would like you to tell us a little bit more about yourself and also what brought you to special education teaching.
Sure. So as a young girl, I would babysit in the neighborhood. I was a mother's helper at the local pool club, and I always loved being with children and doing things with them. So that led me to becoming an education major at school in college and then furthering that career into a master's degree. I started substitute teaching, and then when a job became available, it was out of license area, so they placed me in special education, and that's when I went for a second master's degree to fulfill that requirement and degree, and that's what I continue to pursue my career in.
This is amazing, and I also have 2 master's degrees. At first, it was just like, what? I have to do another master's degree? I wasn't happy about it. But then you just gain more experience and you then figure it out. Wow, I actually needed it.
Yeah, it was beneficial. It was a good thing. Somebody found me and knew that this was the job and the area that I needed to continue to pursue. Whoever knew something I didn't, I'm very thankful and grateful for.
Exactly. And I think that special education teachers are amazing. They are very needed. I think more and more as more and more students population does become diagnosed, so to speak, with being neurodivergent, having special needs. I mean, I think every child has special needs, right? But the way the system works, you have to be classified in order to get access to special education teacher. I wish it wasn't like that, but that's what we have. So this is a very important position in the school district. I would like you to take us to time from your job, from teaching, where something that you have done, strategy, activity, approach, worked for students, and you kind of realized that and you were just like proud of yourself too, and we would like to know about it more.
Sure. One thing that comes to mind specifically is I had to be flexible. I had to be like a chameleon because a lot of my students were in a general ed classroom, so they only got a special education support service or teacher like myself to walk into the classroom for maybe 1 period a day, sometimes 2 periods a day. I would collaborate with the classroom teacher. We would sometimes co-teach. Sometimes we would do independent teaching. One of us would be in the front of the room. One of us would be in the back of the room. I saw that my students would sometimes struggle with the timing or the pacing or getting materials in order to be ready for the lesson. And so my approach was to give them a visual schedule on their desk. We would laminate it and personalize it and make sure that it was visible and available for them to keep up with the pacing and the time frame of the day. And in addition to that, I would color code the folders and the notebooks to coordinate with specific subjects. So maybe reading would be a red notebook and a red folder, and math could be a blue notebook and a blue folder, etc. These were things that could also save time to make the children independent and confident and feel like they could handle the structure and the flow of the day without having to feel like they were rushed or pressured or any of those things to feel frustrated within the classroom setting.
I love this strategy. It's kind of like an approach because this is not something that they do like today and they don't do it tomorrow. This is something that was with them every day. And what you said, it helped them in being more independent. So it kind of like replaced constant teachers' reminders. Even without the teacher, they knew what to do because these physical visuals were there to support them. So I think this is an incredible strategy. And also probably it's important to know how to do it properly. So it really is actually useful. And how did you make these visuals? Like, did you purchase them in like a teacher store or online? How did this happen?
So for me, a lot of these things were not available in the teacher store or online at the time. So we would just create it. I would sometimes use Google Images and copy and paste it onto a Word document, or we could simply cut them out and glue them on a small sheet of paper. We use the laminator a lot so that this way it could be laminated and kept. This way, if anything got on it, you could just simply wipe it off. You could place it on the desktop, you could place it inside the desk. It could really be flexible where you used it and individualized. The children, if they didn't want to use Google Images or anything that was clipped, from the computer or the internet, and if they felt like they were good artists, they could even draw the picture to go with the word or the subject as a reminder. It just depended on the student and how we could personalize and tailor each individual visual schedule.
And I love how you involved them in this so they could participate in making learning easier for themselves and managing their learning. And all kinds of other things that they have to manage, which is not easy, right? When you are in school, neurodivergent, and you do have some struggles, and you have to find ways of managing some of these things, and you significantly help them with this strategy. I think that, these days, you could probably print it out, and there's laminators in school too, so it's possible to make these aiding sort of devices. And I like the involvement of kids in it, right? Because they can tell you, oh, this one would work with me. I like that one. I like this picture. So that could be very, very helpful and beneficial. I love the strategy. I really do. And I would like you to tell us a little bit, based on your experiences, based on what you see as far as the work of special education teachers, what kind of factors make this job a little bit easier? And you think that it's important for every special education teacher to consider that? And then on the other side of the spectrum, what are things that are not good, that are not helping, but they do exist?
There are so many things that exist, I'm sure, that are exciting and frustrating and overwhelming. Things that are good are when you can collaborate and communicate with your staff members, your team, general education teachers, special education teachers, the therapists, all the team members that would be a part of each individualized child's services or success in academics. So when you have that open line of communication and that open-minded concept, I guess we can call it, then it makes things more successful, and obviously it makes things a little bit easier to navigate throughout the course of the school year, because of course things are ever changing. Things that are frustrating are the curriculum and the timeline and the time frame that you're kind of stuck within. So when you are in a mostly general education setting, even with a diagnosis or an individualized education plan, an IEP, you still have to follow the mandates and you have to follow the timeline of the curriculum, and that can be frustrating, especially for a child with special needs, because they may need extra time, they may need modifications to the program or the subject or that specific portion of the curriculum. And so we have to be mindful that there are other things that come into play, so to say, other factors that really can be significant or hinders to what is coming along with each individualized student. And so that could be frustrating.
That's right. And but I like what you said about collaboration, because a lot of effectiveness in teaching comes from collaboration between teachers. And sometimes we don't see collaboration between general education teachers and special education teachers. And that is something that can be really problematic. And do you have any strategy that would help, let's say, a young special education teacher who wants to create a climate of collaboration?
Sure.
And what are the ways of doing this, approaching it for a teacher like that?
So I always approached it like being a chameleon, right? You had to be flexible, you had to be ever changing, you had to be, as the special educator, sometimes you were walking into a teacher's classroom who was very warm and welcoming and very inviting, and they were thrilled that you were entering their classroom, hopeful that you would be there to lend a helping hand and share and support and collaborate. And then there were other times when, they didn't necessarily want you in there, but they knew that you had to be. And so you really had to be flexible and change your approach and your ways depending on each and every classroom setting that you entered. So it was extremely important to realize that and know how to be ever changing. And so as a new teacher or even a senior teacher, any type of teacher, you should really know how to have that flexibility.
And I like the metaphor with chameleon because it's a specific kind of lizard. I think they are lizards. I think
I
consider
think
this.
so.
It's like my biology knowledge is not very bad, but I don't know if I
Not at
know
all.
a lot about chameleons. But just kind of, I know that they can actually change the colors, can they?
Right.
They
Yes.
can.
They blend in with all the different environments. They change their color depending on where
Yeah.
they're located.
That's really interesting. So sometimes special education teacher is more like blending with everybody else, well, maybe like brown colors or something and green. And then there are other times when they have to be maybe a little bit visible. Maybe they have to be a little bit louder. Maybe they have to approach teachers. Maybe they have to be more visible, right? Than just
Most
brown
definitely.
and green colors.
Sure. I
So
would agree with that.
I
Sometimes you
really
need to be a
like it.
little brighter.
Right? Sometimes we have to be a little bit brighter. And I've got my brighter colors.
Yes, you do. I love it.
And I didn't know anything about chameleons. I didn't know that we would be talking about chameleons today at all. But I think we should encourage everybody to go even and Google what they are and how they change, and then how we can use these amazing abilities to kind of change a little bit like the way we act as special education teachers and any kind of teachers. So let's
Most
say
definitely.
we have the beginning of school year and the special education teacher is thinking, how do I get everybody on board? How do I create a sense of like team and a sense of like if there are any kind of issues or the teachers don't know what to do and they have special education children in their classroom. So they're going to have questions. They will have situations when they will get stuck. They will not know how to reach out to that particular student. And how does the special education teacher at the beginning kind of try to create this kind of atmosphere of working together without selling directly? We have to work together.
Right, sure. Well, I liked to make the general education teachers that I was working with as the special education teacher. First of all, I would approach them because usually before school starts, you have the opportunity to do like a preschool week where it's just the teachers setting up the classroom or getting ready for the curriculum or establishing who your class was going to be or your colleagues. So I liked to introduce myself, walk in, let them know that we have a couple of students in here that I will be working with. Let's set up some time and let's go over each of the children's IEPs so that we can discuss their needs, their goals, and let's try to start off successfully and hopefully keep that open line of communication. So if you start on a positive, hopefully they know that it's something that we can have a great working relationship with for the remainder of the year. I also liked, if necessary, I would stay late, but I did like to communicate with them, if not throughout the day, then definitely before school or after school, and let them know that I was a resource and somebody available to have that communication with.
I love that. You position yourself as a resource, someone who welcomes anybody to speak about any needs and situations and how to solve, and you just make yourself available and collaborative and dialogic, and that hopefully sets the stage for further collaboration. I love it. I don't know if all special education teachers do this. I have a feeling that many of them don't. Maybe assumption is that it's supposed to happen. But if you don't set the tone, it might not happen, right? Like,
That is
we have to
correct.
be proactive. What do you think?
100% yes. If you don't walk in, approachable from the beginning, then it could be something that people are standoffish with, and you don't want that. You want it to be a simple transition, or as simple, hopefully, as possible. And if you can set the stage right from the start, then hopefully that open line of communication will continue.
I love that. Can you tell us about one particular strategy, something you would like to teach us that is not very complicated, but it might be something really innovative, something that maybe not everybody thinks about doing, but it can make a difference for a child. And we would love to learn it. And some of us might even try it tomorrow or maybe even today, depending on when the audience is listening to the podcast.
I hope so. I hope that I can offer all kinds of suggestions, but one specific suggestion when you're talking about special needs children, sometimes you have a child of whatever age you're working with, whether it's elementary school, middle school, high school, even preschool. Children come in and sometimes they have specific needs. Sometimes it's a behavioral need, sometimes it's an emotional need, sometimes it's, something that's very simple, but it could be something that maybe causes disruption, or maybe something that bothers those around you. So something that I used was social stories, and you can create and personalize these social stories for any specific topic, and you can really make it something that the child feels ownership, because you can work with that specific child. So, for example, if you're having a behavioral issue in the classroom where the child is misbehaving or forgetting to raise their hand and just shouting out the answer and calling out constantly, you can write a social story with them, specifically reminding them of all the different steps that they can take so they don't call out. And before it escalates or becomes something extremely disruptive in the class, you can even remind them within the social story that they may need to take a break. Maybe it's something that a teacher assistant or some other person in the classroom can assist with, and that can be placed in the story as well. And they can say, I need a break. And the break could be a short walk outside of the classroom. It could be a moment outside of the classroom with an assistant or a therapist, and that could be a reminder of maybe breathing techniques, or maybe it's something within the classroom so that they're not even separated, like maybe they know to go to their desk and put their head down, or they go to their desk and refocus, and maybe they take out something like piece of paper and they color because maybe they just have a moment that they're overwhelmed. You have to figure out what the specific de-escalating strategy might be to assist, and give them those reminders and strategies that are personalized for their use continuously to make them successful.
This is very interesting. When I heard social story, I didn't think about that. So if I understand correctly, social story can be very simple. It's just when a situation occurs with a child who all of a sudden just like tunes out and you know that something is happening, or maybe they are even disruptive for some reason. Social story comes into playing, and it can be as simple as, oh, let's just walk out to the hallway, or let's go outside and speak about it. And just like taking a break, and then during the break, we're just figuring out certain things, what we're going to do with the child. And it can be just like that, or it can be a little bit more complex. It can involve drawing about the situation or something else, or writing. It really is just a time out of the classroom whose purpose is to kind of like help the child de-escalate whatever issue that was, talk about it, and then through working through activities of any really kind, sky is the limit here, I guess, figure out how to then get back to the classroom and to learning. That's how I understand it. Is my understanding correct, Ariel?
Yes, yes, it gives you a moment to calm down,
Yeah.
reflect, get back on track. It's, meant to be something that's soothing and comforting, and really it could be personalized for school. You could even have a home version if things are happening at home that, might seem that it needs help with. It could be created a version for home. You could do anything, really. There's no limitations or expectations. It's really just something that can be created for any circumstance.
I love it. And I imagine situation, let's say in the general classroom, they learn in social studies, whatever, and it's like it's the classroom with just middle school children, and there is one teacher, and all of a sudden this one student just totally tunes out, and the teacher sees it, and maybe some teachers would just kind of like ignore it, right? But here is the situation that tells me it would call for a social story. And maybe the teacher could, I don't know, involve special education teacher or someone, and ask just for help at that. I mean, you can call, right? You can call a special education teacher in the classroom. They come in and then quietly in the hallway, hey, I have a student here who like totally tuned out. Do you think you can do a social story with them, right? Help them out. I see this that any teacher can do anytime.
It does not have to be done as a mandated special education student. You can call for support with a therapist or a special education teacher. There were plenty of times that people asked for my assistance with even the general education students that were struggling or having, some sort of situation. And we would go into a separate classroom, myself and the student. We would talk. We would get to,
yes.
Sometimes we would have to play a game. I would want to gain a relationship and some type of positive rapport with the child so that this way then we could understand what the end goal would be, how we could make this social story a positive thing so that it would be useful. We don't just want to give them a tool and say, here, use it, but they don't know what it is, how to use it. And also you want it to be personalized so that it speaks to them and they remember when I do pull this out and use this, oh, these are my reminders. They belong to me and it makes sense for me and to me.
It's a very useful tool, and it helps in building relationship. And that's how you can find out what's actually happening, right? Why the student tune out in the conversation during the social story. These things will come out, and that will be very helpful. I love this strategy. Thank you so much for sharing with us.
My pleasure.
And as we come into the end of our conversation, if you could tell us where we can follow you, and if someone would like to know a little bit more about Social Story or where to find resources, maybe perhaps they could reach out in DM. So what are the platforms you would be okay with that?
My pleasure. I am on LinkedIn, and I am on Facebook, and I am also on Instagram. And you can reach out to me by my name, which I will share with you in
email. Yes. Thank you so much, Ariel. Thank you so much for everything you have done and you are doing for children. Children deserve well-educated and sensitive, supportive special education teachers. And that's why your advocacy is very important. And I would love to support it, and I always will. Thank you so much. And thank you, our audience, too, for tuning in. Let us know what you think about these topics, because I think they're very important for every child, not just special education children, for sure. Thank you so much, Ariel.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing and for having me on today.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you. This is Get Inspired.